everyone, and welcome back to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is brought to you by LawSikho. So today again we have two articles for discussion. First is from the Hindu, which is titled as Employment, Finally an Election Issue, wherein we will be discussing as to how unemployment has been given, at least this time in the Bihar elections, very high importance, and it has been extensively discussed. But then what are the myths and the realities that are attached to this topic? We'll be discussing in this article. And secondly, which is from the Indian Express, which talks about not ready for smog battle. So here it basically discusses about the various challenges that are faced by the state pollution control boards, and how it is important, how much is it important to do away with these challenges, so that the actual goal of deterring the air pollution can be achieved. And finally, we have the Newsflash column, wherein we'll be discussing the small and crisp news points that are important for a prelims exam. So if you're also preparing for the judicial services exam, you can definitely enroll yourself and have a look at the LawSikho course that we have for you. So this is an amazing course which is particularly drafted for all judicial aspirants. The link is there in the description box, and you can also download free study material from here. You can also have a look at various other courses that are available at LawSikho platform, like for CLAT, All India Bar Exam, Judgment Writing, SEBI, etc. With this, let's see that what is the multiple choice question for the day. A unique e-health card system has been recently launched by the government of first, Maharashtra, second, Delhi, third, Gujarat, or fourth, Telangana. If you know the right answer, you can put it down in the comment section below. So this is the descriptive question for the day. There are several functional challenges that the pollution control boards in India have to face. Discuss. So today we'll be extensively discussing about the various challenges that are faced by the SPCB, that is the State Pollution Control Boards, and specifically if we talk about, they are the state ones, and otherwise they're all of the pollution control boards in India. With this, let's start with the first article for the day, which talks about the rising unemployment, and specifically if we talk about Bihar. So basically, as we know that Bihar Assembly elections 2020 have now been concluded, and the Bihar elections, in these elections, it is for the first time that unemployment became such a big issue in an election. Because if we talk about the Lok Sabha elections also, or other elections, so the political parties have taken up other agenda to be of more importance. Like if we think about the last Lok Sabha elections that we had, so in that the issue of Ram Mandir and other nationalistic issues were hyped even more as compared to the real problem that was of unemployment. But thankfully, in the Bihar Assembly elections this year, unemployment has been rigorously discussed, and we really are hoping that this discussion is just not merely a talk, but they actually are able to walk the talk, and they really move on this path of solving this problem of unemployment. So here, some small data is available regarding the rising unemployment in the country. So it is 10 years after 2003, GDP growth averaged more than 7% per annum, and there were non-agricultural jobs at 1.5 million per annum. But only 2 million youth joined labor force as school enrollment were increasing, and new non-agricultural jobs pulled off 5 million out of agriculture. But the economy was slowing for 9 quarters prior to COVID-19. So if we talk about like till the time of 2013, from 2003 to 2013, that was a 10-year span. So in this situation, the jobs in the non-agricultural sector, like obviously we know that the agriculture sector is the primary sector, and we're talking in here about the tertiary or the secondary sector. So here in the non-agriculture sector, the jobs were increasing, but with the increase in the jobs, the enrollment, or as such the participation of the people or the youth in the jobs or the labor had decreased, because the enrollment in the education institutions and school, these enrollments were considerably increasing. But in the very same time, and after this time, prior to COVID-19, we know that the Indian economy is not something that actually has that started shrinking only after COVID-19 pandemic. But even before, if we talk about 9 quarters, now as I just we had discussed earlier as well, that a complete year is divided into 4 quarters, which is for 3 months per quarter, and this is done so that we can more intricately follow up with the growth and or the the fall of the economic trends in the country. And that is why in the 9 quarters, even prior to COVID-19, the economy of India was considerably slowing down. So the entire burden of a slowing economy cannot be put upon the shoulders of COVID-19 pandemic alone. And that is why we need to understand that there were various reasons that were earlier also responsible for a slowing economy of the country. So the central government denied that it was a problem. Now, as we know that in the Lok Sabha elections also, the problem of unemployment was just thought to be like that it is just not a problem. It's so they in a way treated it. They didn't even treat it as a problem to say very specifically, and even they delayed the release of the NSS, that is the National Sample Survey data on employment in 2019, and this data on the status of employment and unemployment in the country was released only a week after the election results were declared. So because obviously they knew that if this data is released in time, even before elections, the attention of the people would be driven towards this huge problem of unemployment, and thus they would be questioning the government upon this. And to avoid that situation, even the entire data regarding employment was not released even till the elections. And then in Bihar and UP, if we talk about, then the situation is such that millions of poor migrant laborers actually returned home. And now obviously we know that it was called as the reverse migration that actually occurred, because there were loss of jobs in the cities, and the migrant laborers or the workers, they moved back to their hometowns or villages. And in this scenario, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, since most of the labor in the country comes from the states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, so when these laborers they went back to their home states, it actually increased the burden of these two states to accommodate these people first of all, and to provide them with jobs that also pay well. So now here, as we discussed, that we'll be discussing a few realities and few myths that are attached to the sector of employment in India. So the first reality is that only 7% of total employment is created in the government, which is including the public sector units, according to the National Sample Survey 2017-18, and wherein many a times it is thought as a myth that government is the main employer, which now, as we can see, according to the NSS data as well, it is not the case. It is the private sector which provides for the maximum number of employments in an year and can cater to a greater need of employment, because it is only 7% of the total employment that is created in the government sector. So out of the total 465 million jobs, only 34 millions were created in the government sector. So now we can understand that blaming or just looking forward only towards the government sector to provide employment is something that is only superficial, because it does not really have that much of capacity itself to absorb so many people as employees. And that is why the only thing that can be done to the best is that we should fill the vacant seats or the vacancies that are currently there in the government offices. But apart from that, it is the public sector that will actually be able to cater, in a real sense to the need of employment. Then the number of youth engaged as self-employed declined from 81 million to 63 million from 2005 to 12, and then further to 49 million in 2012 to 18, and 95% of the Mudra loans were given to smallest Shishu category. So there was a hype that was earlier created by the government that rather than seeking a job, you must have really heard enough of it, wherein it says that entrepreneurs are the people who don't really seek job, rather they have the capacity of providing jobs. Yes, it is true, but it is also to be kept in mind as to what is the level of that particular entrepreneur, like of how much value is the total enterprise that that entrepreneur is dealing with. Only then it would be decided as to how many employees can this particular entrepreneur accommodate in his startup. And this myth that self-employment can create enough jobs is also busted out, because the Mudra loan scheme, which was brought in by the government to actually finance or funds the MSMEs, were actually highly availed by only the Shishu categories. Now, as we know that there were different levels of the uh, businesses into which these mudra loans were provided. So the smallest one, that basically just like we have small sector industries, or we have small or cottage industries, just like that we also have the Shishu category under the mudra loans. So 95% of these mudra loans were availed by Shishu category, and by name itself we know that obviously these categories are very small in small scale in nature, and though that is why they would not really be able to provide employment to a lot of people. Like for example, if I am investing into a complete business which has a total value of just rupees 1 lakh or 1.5 lakhs, you can yourself imagine, you can know by yourself for yourself that how many people will I really be able to give employment to. Maybe one, two, or three, not more than that, obviously, because then I have to invest into a lot of other things as well. So that is why this myth that self-employment will actually create jobs and thus mudra loans would be a very good rescue thing in such scenario is a big myth. Then the other reality is that more than 99% of Indian enterprises are micro. So again, according to the National Sample Survey data 2015-16, we have come to know that 99% of the Indian enterprises or the Indian startups are very small in their nature, and thus they do not really have any capacity to cater to a lot of employment needs. Then focus need to shift to health and education, because obviously after the COVID-19 pandemic, our focus, our goals have to change, keeping in mind the current situation of the entire society. And that is why a huge shift has to be brought into providing more and more employment and engagement in the fields of health and education. And also, the share of the group C and D jobs is 89%, and of A and B group jobs is only 11%. And that is why we need to keep a balance amongst this, because what happens is that many a times the lack of employment, or the lack of seats or vacancies in one particular kind of job leads to huge burden coming on the people who are already employed in this area, and that is why a complete balance and equilibrium must be followed. With this, let's discuss the second article for the day, which talks about the smoke battle. So, as we know, while the discourse is often focused on legislation, legal battles, and politics of air pollution, the issue of inefficient and inadequate pollution control of professionals is also ignored. So, as we know that when we talk about catering to the stopping or curbing down of air pollution, just yesterday only we were discussing about that how much important is it for us, our health sector, and the entire nation and country and world at large, that it is very important to curb all kinds of pollutions, and the most detrimental, as we know, is the air pollution. And that is why it is very important that we pay a lot of attention onto the various bodies and institutions that work in this direction. So here, as we know, that the CPCB, which is the Central Pollution Control Board, is well funded, and we have this similar state body that is called as the State Pollution Control Board. But here, a very nice contrast has been discussed between the CPCB and the various SPCBs, that the CPCB, that is the Central Pollution Control Board, that is at the national level, is well funded, and also it has various other kinds of facilities available as well. But when it comes to the various state pollution control boards, they are facing a lot of challenges, and these are the challenges that have been enlisted in here. Firstly, critical shortage of staff. Now, as we just discussed, even in the previous article where we said that the government needs to fill up the vacancies or the vacancies as soon as possible. So in such a scenario, what happens is that the shortage of staff causes a lot of burden and stretch on the already working employees in a particular institution. In such a scenario, for example, just imagine that there is a particular kind of task that generally requires, for example, 100 people to carry out that task smoothly and efficiently. But now, because the vacancies are not filled, we have only, for example, say 50 people working in that institution, and the other 50 slot is completely vacant. Just imagine that the work is still of the nature that could be done by 100 people efficiently, but now the only number of people we have to get this work done is just 50. So in a way, one person or one employee will have to cater to the work that actually had to be done by two employees. So the stress or the burden of work is completely doubled. In such a scenario, there are huge chances of corruption as well, huge chances of inefficiency, and also there are chances of the work not even being completed well in time and also not in the proper manner. So in such a scenario, there should be this critical shortage of staff should be meted out. And they've also given an example in here that the Haryana Pollution Control Board has a 70% shortage. Now just imagine, it is not like that 70% are filled and we have only 30% shortage. There is completely a shortage of 70% of the staff in Haryana Pollution Control Board. Secondly, they do not get to develop any specialization, so they are not stratified system, and one officer does multitask. So obviously the division of labor is not clear. Basically, this first point is actually the one that leads to the second one, because obviously where there will be shortage of staff, one person will be required to do work that he is not really entitled to, but still he has to perform because of the shortage of staff. And that is why one person does multitasking, due to which many a times not even one task can be performed in a very specialized and proper manner. Thirdly, lacking necessary legal skills. So even a few full-time public prosecutors are available in the SPCA, the State Pollution Control Boards, and that is why many a times it becomes very difficult to prosecute the polluters and to provide them with a proper legal action against them. And that is why this thing should also be fulfilled, and there should be no lack of the legally skilled people or the legally skilled staff in the particular pollution control boards in the state. Fourthly, chronically underfunded, because this has been an everlasting problem with almost all the government institutions. Whenever we talk about that, the funds are a major problem. Many a times the people, the employees are very zealous, they want to work, they're very efficient, but obviously due to lack of funds they're not able to do a lot of stuff, and that is why they're unable to spend on crucial functions. Many a time they have to go through some campaigns or awareness drives amongst the people and other stakeholders, but due to the lack of fund this cannot be made to outreach to a greater extent of public, and that is why it just becomes a huge failure. So the funds should also be provided smoothly to these state pollution control boards. And finally, officials are given additional responsibilities unrelated to pollution. Now they have given a very a to be thought upon a kind of an example, wherein the Haryana Pollution Control Board has poultry farms under its ambit, which is very strange, because obviously when you're talking about the control of pollution and you have been given some task that is just not really, at least not directly related to your work, it may be or may not be very remotely related, but poultry farms under a pollution control board is really something very questionable. So these things need to be stopped, and here are some important functions that have been given for the state pollution control boards, like to plan a comprehensive program for the prevention, control and abatement of the air pollution and to secure the execution of thereof. So basically the functions of the CPCB and the SPCBs are almost the same, just that their jurisdiction differs because of their hereditary or the hierarchy level. So then let's see, what do we have for news and flash today? Firstly, unique e-health card for all Delhi residents. So probably you have your answer now. So the Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has announced that all residents will have the card by August 2021. The card has been designed as a QR code based card to collate clinical details of patients in one place and ties it with HIMS, and HIMS is simply the Health Information Management System. Just like when we were discussing about the digital health system, wherein we'll have the digital cards, digital health cards, and digital system of the entire forming a network of the health related areas. So this is almost something that is going to be done by the Delhi government. So this was all for today. We hope it was a good session for you. Thank you so much for staying tuned with LawSikho.